You know,
Not yet.
when they came in, the reason I don't mind using the word socialist is because it really is all around me. And it is what it is. When I was fighting this forest legacy thing, one of the critters that the land trust brought in was a guy by the name of Samuel Lovejoy. He works for Fisheries and Wildlife, big shot there in Massachusetts. Well, he's a state employee now, and he got up there and said, "You just got to pass forest legacy. How can you not? You hate the world?" You know, he just said his thing and sat down and did a little research on this feller. And a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, going back in the 60s and 70s, he was growing vegetables in pot over in Montague. Okay, I'm not against agricultural endeavors of any kind, but that's where he was. He was a big, big anti-nuclear activist. At the time, they were thinking of siting a nuclear plant in the area. Well, the electric company had to put up some weather monitoring equipment to measure wind direction, speed, and all that for safety reasons, you know, just in considering this. It wasn't a done deal, it was just a discussion the public was having. So this 550-foot tower goes up, they begin monitoring the weather. Mr. Lovejoy drives by, pulls some tools out of his trunk, goes up, and crashes this 550-foot tower to the ground. Now, he went and got a socialist professor from MIT to go in and testify in court and so on and so forth. To make a long story short, the cop in town charged him for malicious damage to private property. He went in and told the judge that was a tower, that's real property, because the land in any permanent or semi-permanent structure on it is real estate or real property. And private property is like your car, or, you know, other things not attached to the ground. So because the cop charged him for malicious damage to private property, he got off on a technicality. I'm also reading what this guy was doing back at this time, and he was planning a trip to South America to help with a socialist revolution down there. It's in books. This guy's got folk songs about him, and now he's standing in my town telling me it's an absolute emergency, our forest, and we've got to sign up for forest legacy.
Do you have a pal from Hawaii?
Huh?
Do you have a pal from Hawaii?
I don't know. He doesn't have too many pals around my neck of the woods, that's for sure. But, you know, here we are. We got someone who's underpinned with socialist values, who's in my state government, who's in my office, who's in my town, and in my business. And at some point, I got to say, you know, I'm adhering to the law. I've got a Wetlands Protection Act. I don't violate that. If I got to enforce it, I do. I've written enforcement orders to people. I've written enforcement orders to my own DPW, too. But where do you draw the line with these things that become beyond what the law allows? The woman from the land trust said, you know, it is law, Dave. You do have to follow the law. Land trust can preserve in perpetuity. And I said, it is not a mandate. We can. It's a tool that's out there. We got to get in there, look at what these programs are, if they have socialist aspects to them. Look at that. What is it doing to the relationship between the private individual and the use of that land? And if we keep pushing it off, giving it to nonprofit consortiums, letting it go into the regional planners, we're going to lose in a big way. We're going to have economic loss, and we're going to have an environmental degradation beyond what we saw after the Industrial Revolution.
Speaking to your point earlier about big governments getting more than they can take care of, Columbia has 2 lakes in town. They have Columbia Lake, which is a spectacular lake, lots of people around it, and then they have Mono Pond. And the pond was sold to the state maybe 10 years ago, and they put a boat launch on it, and they were going to take care of it. And everybody knows about the invasive weed issue. And the lake is kept pretty clear. They drop it down every winter. They clean it up just to kill the algae. they have found these invasive aquatic weeds in Mono Pond.
Yeah.
And the state can't afford to do anything about it. If Columbia wants to do something, they can, but the state
You know,
cannot afford to do
they
it.
knew years ago that doing lake drawdown actually can increase the potential for invasives. You expose a substrate that normally wasn't there, and as the birds fly over and do their business, you've got something that could land in a soil muck type of substrate and begin to take root. So we know lake drawdown from invasives introduction point of view can actually be a bad thing. But, you know, lakes and ponds, you find a group that takes over an entire lake, in this case the state. Right now, they put a boat ramp on there so you can technically stock it. They won't stock anything that doesn't have public access. But, you know, that's getting their foot in the door. They're saying, hey, we'll promise you all these things, and they may do all those things at first, but that can change. It's like performance standards. The state may say, you know what, we can't afford to maintain this. We have a government shutdown or whatever. You know, stay away. No more people. We can't go in there and make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself or whatever. And, you know, we've got to maintain those resources as close as possible